We're good to go. I've said this on every podcast, right? That I'm not the best at intros, but I'm starting to get there a bit more. As I get like a more calm and composed with this stuff,
Yeah.
it's starting to get a bit better. So I know you wanted to come on for a long time, and I've wanted to have you on for a long time. But it's interesting because I think you're probably the first wrestler I've had on that's more independent. In the sense it's not necessarily an ICW wrestler or in like WWE like that. But I think I've been paying attention to you for a while, and I like your work. And everyone, it's Ashley Vega in the house here.
Thank you.
That was probably the most smooth intro I've ever get anyone on the podcast ever. So you should appreciate that. But no, I've had a lot of wrestlers on the podcast recently, right? And I was been watching a lot of wrestling as well. And actually, it's probably a good time to talk about wrestling because there's been a lot of stuff that's happened the past couple of weeks, like some mental stuff.
Yep.
You've obviously been in wrestling for a long time.
Yeah, I started when I was 15, probably too young to start. But yeah, I got into wrestling because I have an older brother who was obsessed with wrestling. But whenever he had it on the TV, it was all just like Kane and Undertaker, so it scared me to death, and I was like, I hate this. And then I remember I watched, I think it was Mania 22 with them, and it was Mickie James and Trish, and it was the first time I ever saw the women wrestle, and I was like obsessed since then, and I would only watch the girls after that. But that's how I got into it.
That's what I seen you take the pictures with that belt as well. That
yes, I had to.
In her outfit,
I was just like, such a mark. So I don't even hide it. I just don't care.
This is I'm also such a mark. Don't worry about it. It's like every wrestler I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe this. You try to contain yourself. You should have seen the state of me last night at that ICW show meeting Grado, man. I was like, oh my god, can I see all
I feel like everyone's like that with Grado though, because I've met him a few times, but I'd still be like, oh my god, it's Grado.
I'm like, that's the Scottish Dustin Rhodes, what's happening? No, I'm very rarely get starstruck these days, but he definitely got me a bit. So Trish Stratus and Mickie James, that's quite a while back.
Yeah.
And 15 is an early, and I would say that from then to now, the wrestling industry, especially for the women, has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
I was curious as to when you look at maybe when you first started getting into it to now, what kind of cultural change have you seen in terms of the approach for the women and backstage and things like that?
I think when I started wrestling, I started doing shows at 16, and obviously the speaking out thing and all that happened, but there was obviously loads of things when I was younger at wrestling that were bad, but I never really knew about it because it was all we knew. It was just normal for these things to happen and for guys to say things to you and stuff like that. And I think now, after all that happened, like it's just such a nicer place, and it's nicer because there's a few other girls trainees that are like 15, 16 that are the age I was when I started, and they're coming into a much safer environment. So like it is just such a big difference in the last like few years in wrestling. It's not just a horrible place and an atmosphere, but it's just really nice to see girls that are started like are the age I am when I started, and they're just in a much better place and a much safer environment. So yeah, it's definitely changed for the good, I'd say.
Well, sure, I think that's a really important point to stress because there was obviously a lot of things that came out in different situations, but I think that making it aware that the locker room. I've talked to a lot of wrestlers from different promotions about how the environments in the locker rooms have changed, and there's more respect for women.
Yeah.
It's you don't see bra and panty matches anymore.
No, I know, which is a shame because I did enjoy them. And people like change of subject, but people always like, I was such a fan of those types of matches, and people are like, well, you're just setting wrestling back 10 years, like that's not what women's wrestling's about. And I'm like, well, women's wrestling and feminism is being what you want to do and having control of that. So if I wanted to do a bra and panties match, that's up to me. I think they're fun, I think they're entertaining, and at the time people like obviously enjoyed it because it got so many views at the time. But now obviously when people talk about it, they're like, oh, that's just horrible, it's disrespecting women. But like people like Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle aren't the best in the ring, but they're in the Hall of Fame because they got a whole, and yeah, it might have been a male audience they got, but they got so much views, and so they did the best with what they did, with what they had or what they were given at that time. So I do love that kind of style of wrestling as well, as weird as that is, but I think it was fun.
Well, that's a really interesting point of view. But what I like about it is, I think the biggest point of that is the idea that women should be allowed to be sexy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be this thing where, like, I think back then it was almost like a, I don't know how to describe this, right? Like, guys were so, back in the 90s, it was it was very much like there was almost like a guys can do it and they want.
Yep.
Which made it sort of a kind of, what is the right word here? What is the word I'm looking for? I think it was the idea that guys were kind of looking at it like they could just sort of control women in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think now, because of the culture change, there's a thing of like not having that sort of, sort of teaching guys.
Yep.
It shouldn't be the case of let's cover up women. It should be the case of teaching guys to be better. That's
exactly.
supposed, I think there's a bit of a strange dynamic going on there where people are discouraged in that kind of style of wrestling just because of the idea of, well, it's they're just showing off their bodies and that, and it's like, what is the problem with that though?
I know, if that's what you want to do, just do it. And I think I would, if anyone wanted to book me in a bra and panties match, I'm all here for it. I'll happily do a Playboy pillow fight match.
There's definitely guys watching this, but I want to see that.
I mean, I think it would be so fun. I think it's just, whenever I watch matches with like Tori Wilson and Sable, and Dawn Marie, like the storylines were ridiculous, but they were so funny, and they were cringe, but they were just like that was what they were given. Like, the women weren't given like training like the men, but they were just given these stupid storylines and matches, but they made it fun and they made it entertaining. So I think I don't know, I enjoy watching that kind of style of wrestling, and each to their own.
No, definitely, they made something out of really not being given much of an opportunity. They made it, and they drew people to watch the show.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, like, wrestling, for all the goodwill in the world, you could be the best wrestler in the world and have the best matches, but you need to draw people to watch the stuff and get butts and seats type of thing. And,
exactly.
And they did that in a time where it really, when you had like Stone Cold and the Bucks and all that, the people were talking about stables and Trish Stratus and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just like, I think when people talk about that boom in the 90s, like to into, or just in the small circle of thinking about your Stone Cold and the Rocks, which obviously had a big impact on it. But the actual whole crew was every area from the the men's stars to the tag teams to the women. Everyone was drawn, which is what made it such a big boom at the time. So
exactly.
It's not necessarily, but I do like that kind of thought process. I think there's a bit of a stigma to the idea that you should always appeal to a certain crowd,
audience,
and you can just be. I think that's the beauty of wrestling as well. You can just be in you want to be.
Yeah, there's so many different styles, and there's so many different types of people. It's just there's not just one style of wrestling. There's so many different styles for different people, which I think is great.
Do you remember that story with, like, it was a stable, and was it Mark Mann? Something. Some guy was like, so she was like seen as this sex symbol basically at the time, and he was like her like bodyguard or something, and he was trying to cover up and all that. See, as soon as you were talking this, I was like, you and Jason got on that shit, man.
It was fun though, like, it's so stupid. The storylines were so stupid.
See, because he's a pure ignorant Rangers fan as well in his character, he could I mean, his character, or is that just
it's just
it was so wacky, but like, Rangers men don't let their women show off like that and all that fish, man.
Well, that would definitely work.
It would definitely work, man.
At ICW.
Exactly. ICW should go in that shit, man.
You should. Right here.
I'm putting Jason to the spot. Jason's got this wee dick. I'm only doing this because I'm eyeing for a food with the guy, so there you go.
Oh, that's good though.
I told him that he was on a year ago, and I said to him, like, one day I'm going to wrestle you, and he was like, right, no bother. And now I'm actually doing the training and stuff. I've been training every week, every Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
And Wolfgang is beating the shit out of me, man.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying it. It's good.
Yeah,
And
good.
I'm like a wheelchair version of Mysterio or something. It's like,
I love that. No, that's good. Is that at the asylum?
it's actually Iron Goddard's gym.
Oh, right. Yeah, got you.
Because not to talk about myself too much, because I do have a bad habit of that in this. I certainly do. But when he was in the podcast, Wolfie, you know, I've had a lot of different people on the podcast, like Jack Jester as well, and I kept saying how, what be involved in this? I want to try and do something. I can move about. I'm not paralyzed. I can do stuff. And he was just come in and we'll see what you can do. And I came in and done some moves, and he was like, "Oh, you actually can move a little bit." And then so we've been doing that for what was funny though, because like, I'm quite limited in my shoulder mobility because I've very much like from an early age decided, right, I'm not going to do it into my legs. I'm just going to focus on my body, and I ended up kind of getting a bit too in the way.
Right.
So what's happening now is that my shoulders actually don't touch the mat. Like when I'm lying down, right, my shoulders actually raised. Don't fully touch the mat.
Right.
And he's like, you need to have your shoulders be able to touch the mat in order to take a pin. And I just said to him, it just means you're going to have to make me win every match, mate. That's
fair.
The only way this is going to work is if I win every single match. That's like
the new streak.
I'm saying that to him every week. I'm like, it seems like the only way to do this is if I go on a major win streak.
I think that's fair.
He's like, I mean, you know, it could work. I was watching you know, I want to get into this a bit because it was something I thought about last night as I was this ICW show, right? Was I watched one of these wrestlers and they were all like really good technically. Like the matches, the quality of the matches from top to bottom was sensational. And I think, you know, outside of your WWEs and your mainstream American television, there's this idea that the standard kind of drops off, but I don't think it does as much anymore.
No.
But one of the things that was really interesting about Grado coming out, not to suck his ass too much because I'm sure he gets plenty of that shit, but he, you know, it's not like he isn't doing, you know, your flips and your crazy moves and that all the time. But what I noticed the difference between him and pretty much everyone else in the card was that every single move he was engaging the audience. It wasn't about doing it in fancy. It was about making sure that every move the crowd was feeling it, the crowd was part of it, and you could see that sort of experience and psychology come into it. So that was something that kind of dawned on me as I was watching it. Like, it's not about being the best wrestler is the wrestler that is connected to the audience the most. Whether that's a good guy or a bad guy. Which is why you get guys like Kez Evans as your champions, because you get the whole crowd coming out saying "fuck you, Kez" as he comes out. He's doing a good job. I mean, he's not drawing shit, but he's doing a good job.
They hate him, so like that's it.
Exactly, like he's a top athlete. But that was why I see in terms of your own training, you've obviously been wrestling since you were 15, which is a crazy age to start. And you're 21 now, so 21. It's like you've got so much time. It's mental. By the time you're like 25, you could be like fucking Tasha Banks or something.
It is weird to think about it, how long I've been doing it. Because obviously when COVID started, I didn't wrestle on a show for 2 years, which was mad. And then like I've trained with different people along the way and stuff, which is the good thing that you get all that experience from different people. So I'm currently training with Joe Hendry, who I've been with for the last 2 years. I go to his school weekly, and he's great. He's like the best person ever.
Yeah, it's an interesting name to drop because Leighton Buzzer was saying the same thing. Yeah. And he was talking about how he was like, Joe Hendry kind of gave him his big break in terms of when he got into the audience and stuff like that. So, like, there was a lot of praise for him in terms of his professionalism and the level he's at. So you're learning from the best. Yeah, no,
he's great. I started just before COVID. I started training with Joe, and when I started, I was like not in a very good place in wrestling. I wasn't wrestling as much, and I'd kind of stopped doing shows, and I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't thinking that I was going to keep doing it, and I almost quit. And then I got a new skill, started training with Joe, and he was like one of the first people who said to me, was like, "You're going to be the best female in Europe in a couple years' time." And I was like, wow. And I believe that now, because he genuinely does believe that I'm that good. So when other people believe it, you start to believe it yourself. And then now I just think I have no limitations. I have so many things that I want to do, and so many things coming up. that I can't say, but I'm just
Oh,
really excited to see what happens. Because I've just been broadening my horizon. I've been like, we were talking about Mickey James earlier. Like, she actually DM'd me out, and I nearly died. So NWA were doing their show, and they were doing an all women show, and she messaged me saying, you know, I would love to have you on it and all this stuff. And I was just like, well, this is like insane. But because it was in the States and it was during COVID, I couldn't fly myself out to work there. So, but ever since then, she's been like messaging me back and forth saying, you know, how are you getting on? And she's just like, it's just so weird when I think about Mickey James, like, like wanting to speak to me. Like, why does she want to speak to me? But she's just so lovely. So, like, having people like Mickey and Lisa Marie Victoria as well. She was on live with me not that long ago. She just joined me, and she was just being so nice, and she was giving all this like helpful advice. So I've got like people like that on my side, and Joe Hendry, who gives me like all the confidence. And to think, oh, I almost quit 3 years ago, and now I've got all these people that are backing me and actually think I can do this. I'm like, well, I obviously can do it. I just need to suck it up and just put the work in.
wow, that is amazing. I think it's a lot to be said for self belief. Like,
Yeah.
see, as long as you believe that you can do it,
Yeah.
nothing, your mind is really truly limitless.
It changes.
There's so many times in my life that I thought, I'm definitely going to be done here, man. And then you just pull yourself out of it, and you're like,
you just do it.
Life is good, life can be good
It is.
if you put the work in.
It is, yeah, because like there was so many times that I wanted to quit wrestling. It was just such a bad time, and I wasn't getting used, and there was just horrible people in the business that I wasn't getting on with, and just yeah, even with all these people that I was working with, like before speaking out, and then they were all these horrible people, and you're like, oh, I can't do this. This business is just not for me. Like, only I think like wrestling is just such a difficult thing to get into, and only the strongest survive. But like looking at that like 3 years ago, thinking I was like done for, and I wanted to quit, and then I didn't wrestle on shows for 2 years, and now I'm like doing all these like cool things. I have all these cool connections and people who genuinely believe in me and all this, and like now like I start to call myself undeniable, because like so many people don't like me, right? That's just how it is. People don't like me. I don't know if it's jealousy, probably is. But so many people don't like me, but at the end of the day, you can't deny like how good I am, because I put in so much work, and I put in a lot of work, and I'm so much better than what I was 3 years ago. So at the end of the day, you can hate me all you want, but you can't actually look at me and say, yeah, she's not good, because I am. There's no denying that.
It's undeniable.
Exactly. That's why I call myself it, because there's just, you can't look at me and be like, oh, she's terrible. Well, I'm not. I've got Mickey James like in my DMs telling me how good I am. So do you think I'm going to listen to you? No, absolutely not.
Exactly. But what's really interesting about that is, the idea that like when you actually put the work in, and you know that you're doing everything in your power to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
That the criticism becomes in that regard of people that dislike you and stuff. You can get these negative self thoughts of like, is that true? Like, is it
true what they're saying? Yeah.
But when you know that you're putting that work in, then there's like, you can have that control in your mind of going, I know that this is not real, and I know that I have that belief in myself because you've done the work, and also in wrestling, if they always say the saying is if they hate you or they love you, you're doing something right anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, everyone always says that, but I think just because I started when I was so young, I was like 18 when like I had left the school I was training at, and I was broadening my horizons, like training with other people, but people didn't like that, and it was very old school that people were like, you can't train anywhere else, you can't learn from other people, you have to stay at the school that you started at, and that's it, and you can't work anywhere else. So when I decided to do that at 18, I remember I was wrestling on a match with Source Wrestling, and I came backstage after my match, and I went on Twitter, and I had all these people like atting me, like putting up tweets about me, like it was just, I was like 18, and there was like people double my age saying all these horrible, horrible things about me, and I was like, this is it, like I'm done, I can't do this anymore. I deleted my Twitter, deleted all my social medias, and just took a break and was like, I can't do this anymore. I just stopped wrestling completely because I was like, all these people were coming for me, but it was all these people that had so much power. So I was like, I'm just some 18-year-old trainee, like who's actually going to listen to me. So I never said anything about the situation. And then when I started training with Joe, like not that long ago, he just completely changed my mindset and was like, all these people are just saying that because they don't want you to do well. And I was always compared to other people at my school. Like, you need to look like this person and you need to be this size. And I remember one of the worst things that ever happened to me is I was wrestling on Discovery for the first time and had this new set of gear and I wore it. And before I wrestled, I heard someone say that, oh, she looks really big in her gear. So after that, I wasn't even worrying about the match. I was worrying about how I looked. I didn't care about how well I done in the wrestling, which is awful. I was caring like, oh my god, I need to suck in and I need to look skinny. Like that's how my mentality was because that's what people were saying about me. So I was like, I went out, I wrestled, and then I was just worried about people were going to say, oh, she looked terrible. She looked fat in that gear. Like she shouldn't have wore that. But that's what people were saying about me before I went out to wrestle. But you just have to kind of put it to the back of your head. And then I went out, I wrestled the match, and it was perfect. Like I got so much praise for it. Like so many people were happy with it. And then I just realized I was like that's it. Like I just can't listen to these people anymore. Like doing all these horrible things and saying these things about me on Twitter. And I just had to remove myself from it all and just focus on myself. And then when I started training with Joe, that's when it just clicked. Like he was like, you are good enough. Like you put more work in than a lot of the girls. So there's no denying that you can't like be good. So I was just after that I was like, no, you're right. I need to just block all that out and just focus on myself because at the end of the day I know that I'm good. And if I start listening to all this stuff that people are saying about me, I'll start to believe it and think I'm not good. So you just have to like cut it all out at some point.
No, definitely. I mean, that's amazing, Ashley. I'm buzzing off that. I'm like,
Yeah.
come on. Team Ashley, man. Fuck them,
Yeah.
fuck the haters.
Exactly.
You know, what's really cool about that is, you know, this whole, you were saying about how people would say you need to be a certain look and have all this. But the really cool thing about wrestling is, for all these old timers in the past that have said all this nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, even you get the fucking Undertaker, man, on Joe Rogan's podcast, talking that load of shit, man. And I mean, you know, I'm saying that as like a big fan of Undertaker, obviously, but you're like, you know, I like that better when this kid didn't speak. But you know, it's like you see all these old timers saying that hey, you need to do certain things a certain way, and they want, and it's like, but you realise that actually every person that's ever done well is because they've been different in some way.
Yeah.
So it's like that logic in itself is flawed. And I think, you know, I've not experienced any of you've experienced, but I feel like I've managed to come in at a time where we're almost, you know, maybe not fully, but definitely improving that situation.
Yeah.
Where there's a more welcoming environment. Like I've experienced that, but Aaron Gordon's gym when you go in and it's like everybody seems to be very much together, wanting to help each other.
Yeah.
Even the SCW roster, you get a whole, it's like a whole different crew.
It's a whole range of people.
I think when people think about SCW, they think about the days of, you know, the documentary and Grado and McIntyre and Galloway, I should say. But, you know, the whole roster has changed and you get a whole young, you know, like Jason Reed, who I know, you know, very well.
Yep.
He and guys like that are like, you can tell that they're not just wrestlers, but they're living the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And they're supporting each other, and it's cool to see. Yeah. But like you've obviously, it must have been a really difficult thing for somebody that young, as a female in an industry like this, especially before the speaking out thing, where you're like, I kind of
there was nothing to really go off of. I couldn't. It was just the way it was. You just had to deal with it and suck it up, and that was it. So that's what I done, and but like, I don't regret anything. And there's loads of things that I've done that I've been like, why did I do that, or why did I say that, when I've like tried to stand up for myself. But I'm really glad all those things happened to me, and people did say those things about me, because if they didn't, I'd be a completely different person, and I wouldn't be as strong as I am now, and I don't think I'd be as successful as I am, and I don't think all these cool things wouldn't have happened to me, because I think you just have to be at the lowest point in your life to change things, and that's when all the good things come along. You have to realize how shit it can be to appreciate everything a bit more.
Oh, that I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's
Mm.
exactly right. For everybody,
Yeah.
it's such a. I mean, it can either make you or break you. But
Mm-hmm.
as you're talking about that though, right, and you're going through that process,
Mm-hmm.
for me as an individual, a lot of things that I have a lot of examples in my head of things that I had to do and go through in terms of my own thought process to get to this point of what you're saying now.
Yep.
You know, what were the kind of steps that you had to take to get to the point where you could go, no, actually, you know, for your own journey in terms of how you're going through all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where there's a lot happening to you, and a lot of people could just go, you know, this is just, you know, you're saying you quit for a bit and
Mm-hmm.
you kind of stop doing it. What was the point where for you, besides anyone else, like, because you can have all the help in the world, but you in your mind you decide, I can do this, you know,
Yeah.
you know, was it just purely the passion and love for wrestling?
Yeah, I think I just couldn't get away from it. Like during lockdown, when I wasn't wrestling and I wasn't really training or like doing anything, um, I would still go up. I would do in my spare time is play wrestling games or watch wrestling. And I made a YouTube channel during lockdown, and I would play like SmackDown versus Raw. So it was just wrestling was like just never went away, and I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it, and I just couldn't like stop. So I just was like, I need to somehow make it work, because if I don't, I just don't even want to. Like now, when I think about myself in 5 years' time, I can't imagine myself not wrestling full time. Like there's just no other option for me. There's no other plan. There's not a plan B. Like there's not anything else I want to do with my life. So when you really think it like that, you're like, okay, well, I need to do everything I can to make it work, because there is no other option. I don't plan on doing anything else with my life, and if wrestling doesn't work, I'll just die because like I have no other plan like that. So there's no other option. I just need to do everything I can to make it work. So I had to make a decision if I wanted to be depressed for the rest of my life, working a 9 to 5 job, or just put everything I can into making my 12-year-old dream a reality. So you just have to make a decision.
Life is too short to not go for your dreams,
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
That's 100% the truth. It's like you can try all these other things, but if there's something gnawing you in the back of your head,
It's always going to be there.
exactly,
Yeah.
I need to do this. Like I need to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so cool that, you know, I just think it's hard for people to fathom. I guess
Mm-hmm.
probably listening to this, how difficult that must have been for a young woman going through that, and her experience of this hate at such a young
Yeah.
age. But like you say, it's give you this sort of thick skin now,
Yeah.
and this confidence and belief,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really cool to see and talk
Yeah.
about, because I think it shows everyone else, like you talking about this, shows everyone else that they can come through whatever they're going through. And when you're that focused on something, it inspires other people. Even at the time I've followed you,
Mm-hmm.
you can see a growth in your social media presence, a growth in your own confidence and the things that you post.
Yep.
And when you see stuff like that, just it inspires other people, and you're inspiring, you know, young women to come forward and do believe in themselves. So you should take a lot of, you know, you should be very proud of yourself for that.
Yeah,
Man. It's like
I definitely am. I think like when I started as well, there wasn't as many women in the scene, so it was extremely hard to kind of get yourself out there, and it was very competitive because there wasn't a lot of women and there wasn't a lot of like opportunities on shows, because there was only be like one women's show, and so you were all fighting for the same spot. Where there is now, like I do a lot of training with Andy Wild, and his female trainees. So I'm always trying to put them on shows with me, and I put their names forward for everything, because I wish that someone was like that, was there for me when I started out. There was someone like myself who would be willing to just help anyone that they can. And so I don't know. I think I just want to make it a much nicer place for all the girls. And when I see like like a lot of girls that are like 15, 16, I just see myself in them, and I just want to help them. Because uh, there was no one to help me when I was 15. So it's just nice to try and have all these nice connections and make sure there's a nice place for when more people come in, more girls especially.
that's literally what this whole podcast is about. Like
Yeah.
the idea of, you know, you grow up through all these sort of traumatic experiences and difficult situations, and then it's like, what I do with these experiences, like, do I let them ruin my life, control my life, or do I help use them to benefit the next person?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm doing. That's why I wanted to have you on, and that's what I try and do with every guest, is have the idea of, you know, we want to use our own tough times and sort of mental and physical struggles to help those that have to follow us and not have to go through the same thing. And with this new kind of environment and culture in wrestling, it's very exciting because Molly Spartan spoke about how, you know, if I'm training the same way as the men, why can't I have as good a match as the men?
Yeah.
This idea that if you're putting the same work as the men are, then I should get the same opportunities. It's not like men and women don't do separate wrestling training; they're training the same,
Exactly.
same way.
It's exact same. Yeah.
So, you know, with those kind of opportunities open up, like, do you, when you see a WrestleMania headlined by like Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair or Becky Lynch and Charlotte, does that inspire you? And you know,
Oh yeah, like I would just, whenever I, like, even at last night watching SummerSlam, just whenever I see like the women headlining and the women putting on these matches, that, like, when I started watching wrestling, it was like Kelly, and there was never women's matches on like the big SummerSlams and Manias. So yeah, it's just, whenever I watch it now, it's just completely different, but it makes me so happy because I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. I want to headline Mania, and I want to do all these cool things. So it definitely inspires me, and I know it inspires like a lot of women these days as well, especially with how wide the range is now.
yeah, the quality worldwide is just off the charts, and it's only, when you really think about it, this whole boom in women's wrestling's only happened over the last sort of 5-6 years. It's not really been that long, which bodes well for the next 10 when you think about it. A lot of the people that I just mentioned there are still, you know, relatively young in wrestling terms, and it's like yourself and like Angel Hayes, early 20s, already get years of experience, already get this crazy confidence. You're like, what is this going to look like in the next few years?
Yeah, I've got so many like plans and so many. I don't know. I feel, I like, you know how when people ask you, where do you see yourself in like 10 years, and they're like, oh, I want to be with WWE, but I just want to be with whatever company will take me. My dreams, I've always wanted to work for Impact because I grew up watching TNA, like, because we were a poor family and didn't have Sky Sports, so we would watch it on Challenge on Freeview. So that was like our free entertainment of wrestling, was TNA. So I've always wanted to work for Impact. So yeah, that's.
I seen you say that you want to be the first
Scottish Knockouts champion. Yeah, and I'd love to wrestle Mickey. So
well,
I mean,
I tell you what, Mickey. I mean, if there's somebody that could be in that for Mickey's probably the one.
Exactly.
When you get this going,
so it's just, I'm just waiting for that call. I'll fly myself out if I need to, but I just would love to work for Impact. It's one of like the best. It's always one that I've always went back to and loved. So,
but, and you know, you spoke about WWE there and stuff like that, and how everyone sort of says stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the main thing for wrestlers these days is to realise that the dream was never for a company. The dream was to wrestle.
Yeah.
So, you know, to get to wrestle anywhere
full time,
like,
just to have that as your job.
That is, you know, that is, it doesn't matter where it is or how, but it's just the fact that would be a reality is that, and there's so much opportunity now, and all across the world, everywhere. You know, even when you look at Europe and countries like France and Mexico and all these different, you know, there's so many organizations that maybe don't get enough spotlight just because they're not on the American television.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of talent out there. Probably, I seen this tweet from somebody, I can't remember his name now, but he was like, there's a lot of wrestlers that would be in your top 10 list that aren't in America or the UK that you don't know about. And it's like that, it just shows you I don't think you could have said that, you know, 10, 20 years ago.
No.
Which bodes really well. And I think, you know, the really cool thing about what you just said there as well is that you know that no matter as long as you keep putting the work in, and Mickey James keeps saying that,
Yeah.
that's like no reason why that can't actually happen.
Yeah, no.
And you're only 21, man. Like, so
Which is, yeah.
Time. It's exciting. I'm so buzzing for you right now.
It's scary. It's weird to think that I've been wrestling for 6 years and I'm 21, which is, but I think I feel about 72.
You're making me wish I started earlier now. I'm 25 and all that. I should have started when I was 20. Man.
No, no. I don't regret starting that early, but my body is definitely broken. So my body wasn't even developed when I started wrestling.
That's a good point to be fair. Like, see the actual wrestling training. Like, there's always been an old school mentality of we need to kind of rough these people up.
Yeah.
Was it like that when you came in?
Yeah, I'd say so. There wasn't many girls at the training I started at, and you were always wrestling guys, so it was, you were just kind of thrown in the deep end, and like you were saying earlier, like there's no reason why women and men's wrestling should be the same, because all I did was train with guys, and I still do, because there isn't as many girls. The only time I really get to train with girls is when I train with Andy Wild, like, and his female trainees, but other than that, there's no girls at my school, and I was never, no, yeah, when I was really young, it was always guys I would wrestle, so yeah, just get used to it.
Do you think that the training now for like 15, 16-year-olds when coming in is a bit more, lack of a better word, safer, I guess?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like when I started wrestling, there was people bringing people in as young as 10 years old, and they were taking bumps, and it was just ridiculous.
No,
like, it was just, it's not normal. It's not normal for someone that age. Their body's not even developed, and you're throwing them about. You're going to just cause so much damage. But like, keep bringing them up again. But Andy does like training for wee wrestlers and stuff. As young as 8, I think it's like, he does like young wrestlers and then juniors, but they don't take bumps, they don't do anything like that. They'll just keep, it's just more of a fitness kind of thing, and you'll do little wrestling drills, but they're not going out there doing German suplexes. Like, you know, you wouldn't do that to a 10-year-old. It's just not normal. So it's definitely a lot safer. There's so many schools that offer that, and you know, coaches actually have PVGs when they never used to back in the day, because no one really cared. So it's definitely a much safer place for people and young people to start training.
That's very good to hear. I think that's, you know, there's a lot of stigma attached to wrestling itself, and this kind of conversation helps people realise that it's okay. There are things in place that help you, you know, kids can go and enjoy it without taking mad bumps.
Yeah, exactly.
I can barely take a bump now, never mind. But like, if you
still trying to avoid it at all costs.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, imagine taking a bump when you were like 10 years old, man.
But yeah, I know, but like, it's just, people thought that was normal, and it just wasn't normal at all. But yeah, I'm glad that there's now safety measures in place for your young children. So it's definitely a much safer environment now than it was 5-6 years ago.
I wanted to talk a little bit about something you mentioned in a previous interview. You were talking about the fact that when you started wrestling, the kind of the reaction you had from your family and friends.
Yeah.
Particularly though, something I found interesting was you were saying how your friends at the time were not as supportive.
Yeah, no.
You kind of lost a lot of them.
Yeah.
Now, when I was reading that, there was something that sprung to my mind. I'm not just saying this because you're here. This actually did specifically spring to my mind, and there was something that Jason did say in the podcast last year. We had this really good conversation about, by the way, good talker, guys. And he talks a lot of shit as well, but he's a good talker.
True.
He was talking about the impact of your social circle and how obviously he was at one point maybe not in like the best wrestling shape, and how getting people that were like-minded with him and getting the right kind of people around him helped him a lot in his development. But obviously at 15, 16, losing all your friends because you want to chase a dream, what kind of impact did that have on you, and how did you kind of start to deal with the fact that, you know, it's a big mature thing to go, I'm going to leave my friends that are currently my friends because they don't agree with us and just chase this wrestling thing and make that decision at 15 years old.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, because I was obviously still in school when I started training, and every weekend, you know, your friends would want to go out drinking illegally and want to do, like, just go out and just enjoy life. By 15, I was training every Sunday. I had shows every Saturday, Friday night. So in the shows I wasn't wrestling on, I was helping out at, because it's just you're just drilled in your head, pay your dues and you'll do well. So I never saw my friends at school at all, and they just, yeah, I ended up leaving school as soon as I turned 16. I dropped out of school because it was just not a good place for me. People were not very nice, and I didn't really have any friends. Like, I was that person that would go in the toilet and eat my lunch, ate my sandwiches in the cubicle, because
So
I
was
had
I.
no,
So was I.
yeah, it was not, it was very traumatizing. So that's how school was for me in the last couple of years, because people just didn't speak to me because they were like, "You're just such a loser. Like, you never hang out with your friends and all that stuff." And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I was really young and I probably should have lived my life a bit more, but I just wasn't like that when I was younger. I just wanted to wrestle constantly. So yeah, that's what I done, and obviously made friends along the way. So yeah, it always works out.
You know, I think it's really interesting something you just said there. You said, I probably should have lived my life a little bit more, right? But that depends on how you define living your life. Like,
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, you were living the life you wanted to live.
I
Like, you were
was.
chasing
Yeah,
after the thing.
it's
So
true.
so it's like, don't that kind of. I find that we have this idea of the way we're supposed to live life.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have all these friends and all that. But at the end of the day, like, see, some of the saddest people I know
Hmm.
are the people that have a million friends.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
That's very true, actually. Yeah.
so it's very commendable that you were able to sort of be
Yeah.
like, no, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it, and I have absolutely no doubt that you go on to
Yeah.
do amazing things. Like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
You spoke about also some of your dream matches, right? And
Mm.
one particular name sort of stood out to me, and it was Casey Owens,
Yes.
who
Yeah.
I was watching last night, and I would say that she's very intense type of character.
Yeah.
Wrestling, wrestling somebody that you might be familiar with, Angel Hayes, I'm
Yes.
sure. So when you watch people like Casey Owens and Viper and people like that, are you taking, in terms of your own development as a wrestler, do you look at them and sort of work on, because I touched on this earlier, but there's a lot of, in today's wrestling, it's very high paced. You're not going to watch any matches that are like Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
It's very
No.
much like 100 mile an hour,
Uh-huh.
because everyone knows that the outcome is sort of pre-planned to an extent,
Mhm.
So it's like this idea that we need to show that we're athletic and all this.
Yep.
But in psychology, seems to have gone slightly more out of it
Mhm.
in a way. But are you as a wrestler developing yourself, looking at these wrestlers, going, how can I pick up things in terms of the way that I'm making every move have an impact in the psychology of it all? Like,
Mhm.
what is your kind of favorite style of wrestling and way of your own work?
I just love. I don't know. I think for me, I love more old school type of wrestling. Like, I love watching what some of my favorite wrestlers are, like Shelton Benjamin, Christian, all these people. And when I was younger, I watched TNA a lot, so it was like old school AJ style. So that's more like athletic. That's more high paced. But I just liked all like different styles of wrestling. I don't like, for example, you mentioned Viper earlier. She's actually someone I still keep in touch with, and she's so lovely at helping me out. Recently I sent her some like match footage of mine, and she would say all these things what she would do and what she thinks would have been better, and she touched a lot in psychology. So having people like that, she really influences me because she just takes the time to watch my stuff and be like, this could have been a bit better, this was good, but if you did it this way, this could have got this reaction. So I don't really think I've got like a favorite style. I just enjoy so many different types of wrestling. Like, I love the whole, like, I love big characters. Like, I love Grado, massive Grado mark. I don't know, I just love so many different types. I'm definitely not a high flyer, fast paced kind of wrestler. I'm not into that. It's just not me. If I was to compare my style to anyone, it would probably be oh God, like Mickey, because I just love,
Mhm.
I do all of her, I watch her matches all the time, and I copy a lot of her. I get a lot of influence from her style. I shouldn't say copy. Same with Trish. Like I love watching them and like older school things because people aren't going to expect me to whip out old school diva moves. People are going to expect me to hit like amazing 450s and all that. But if you're different, then I guess that's what makes you stand out.
Well, you know, it's like making it. You touched on like getting that kind of. Also, just for anyone that's like watching this, like Viper is also Dewdrop.
Dewdrop, yes.
Which I feel like, I mean,
it's just a habit.
It is a habit, innit? And let's be real, Viper and is a better name. You know, she deserves better than Dewdrop.
She does.
But I mean, she's the fact that she made that work. She was wrestling Becky Lynch at the Royal Rumble under Dewdrop. You know, that's pretty incredible.
And she done it, yeah.
So you know, you're getting advice from the right people, but what I think was key to your answer there is you're keeping your mind open to all these different styles. There's no need to limit yourself at this age to one particular area.
Yep.
But also, you know, knowing that your style is different and you can go, right, well, how can I make every sort of move in the psychology of this have the biggest impact in the ring is an element of wrestling that seems to be getting a little bit lost in the sort of, you know, particularly AEW, I would say, is it can be guilty for that sometimes. Yeah. Because you watch the shows, and I love, like, see, as a fan, like, I love watching their shows, right? But they are 100 mile an hour every single week. Like, they go all out every single week, which is great, right, for a fan. But you still have next week.
Yeah, what are you going to do that's going to be better? Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's where, you know, the saying in wrestling, the more I've gotten into it and actually try to do some training and stuff like that, you realise that I used to hear people say less is more all the time, and I was like, shut up with that pish, man. I want to go out there and do everything that we talked about. But you know what I mean? But you get into it and you're like, actually, no, maybe it's got a point in that. Like,
yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, because some people are just like, do all these cool stuff like flips and stuff at the beginning of the match, and then you're like, well, what else is there now for the next 10 minutes? You've done everything that you can possibly do, you know. And I think there's definitely some people that are guilty of that, but I suppose everyone each to their own. If you enjoy watching that, then that's fine. It's just not my cup of tea. I love watching like old school I love watching like old school ECW and one night stands. Like that's just, I love watching like people really trying to kill each other. Then people, you know, jumping about. But you know, everyone likes what they like.
No, I get I like it when it's like it feels like a proper fight. It feels
and there's so much story behind it as well. I love like
always a story. Because I think the best example for me from a story point of view, right, is you look at you go like Shawn Michaels Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. Was a fantastic wrestling match on its own, right? But the reason why everyone talks about that, I don't know if it's everyone, but I talk about it all the time anyway. It's because it's like the story behind it as well was so incredibly well done. From 25 and 26 to where it's like that's what made. Then you put an actual excellent bell-to-bell match after that, like following the story. It made the whole thing this pitch perfect, you know, wrestling, you know, storytelling, and there's, you want to have your flips, you want to have the big moments mean all it can mean by having the story behind it.
Is what draws people in. It's like EastEnders with violence.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love a bit of gossip. I love like a.
Because think about
story.
EastEnders has been on forever. And wrestling's going to go on forever. So it's like having something that draws people in. Like, why do we want to, like, see in your story just now, we are talking about everything you came through and that sort of change in mindset. That story itself is a like selling point for you in your matches. And like, you know, if you're going up against somebody like Molly Spartan, for example, this sort of big evil, you know, monstrous character,
who would batter you,
and she's like, I'm going to squash this. Like she thinks she's like some sort of courageous underdog, and I'm going to show her that she's like everything that everyone said about her was right. You know, this shit. Like, you can say all this stuff, and that's where your life story is like. every sort of main character that you've seen in wrestling, I feel like has become a success because they've been sort of a exaggerated version of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, Stone Cold is definitely like that in real life.
Oh yeah.
The Rock is definitely like that in real life. You know?
It's just like times 100.
Exactly, and that's what makes it. I think, and you being yourself in the way that you are is what will make it succeed.
Yeah.
But just as you were saying that, like you were talking about the kind of matches you like. So let's do a wee quiz, right? Because
Okay.
I'm curious. Like, what are some of your favorite matches all time to go back and watch?
So Mickey and Trish at Mania, because I think that's like one of the ones that have a big story behind it, and so I loved that one for that reason. I loved um Candice Michelle matches. I loved watching Candice when I was younger. I just thought she was the most stunning person in the entire world. But I loved watching. There was a gravy bowl match with Trish, and I think it was Stacey Keebler or it was Tori. But yeah, like who thinks of a gravy bowl match? I thought that was amazing. So I love watching stuff like that. What else was there? Yeah, I think it just varies because then I'll like really serious matches and then I'll throw in like a gravy bowl match that I enjoyed watching. But like they're just matches that I'll go and they're just funny. So I just love watching them.
Yeah.
What else? I love watching anything with Mickey, to be honest. Any
We need to
matches
get
with
this Mickey match happening, man. Mickey James.
Just like I was like, it's going to happen and like at the end by the end of this year, but I don't know yet. But I want it to.
Well, let's say somebody came and you said, "Sell me on the idea that you should fight Mickey James." What would you say to them? Like,
I'd say she's the reason that I'm here, the reason I started to get into the wrestling. She is just one of the best women. She is like the best woman you can get in wrestling. She's done it for so long. She's amazing. She's wrestled the best in wrestling. So who better for her to wrestle than someone that's going to be the best?
There you go. That she's the past, you're the present. That's the thing.
Exactly.
So I mean, I'm sold. So
yeah.
hopefully,
so anyone watching, please book it.
Yeah.
Please.
Impact,
I will work for free.
Impact you on that. That's good stuff. Unless if Impact for some reason watch this, I'll commentate anything you want me to do.
I'm going to tag everyone from Impact.
Exactly. No, it's fantastic stuff. And I think I really love your answer to the matches because I feel like that's kind of outside the box a bit from what people would
usually say. I loved watching Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Well, I loved watching Tori Wilson get naked in a gravy bowl.
But I loved it too for very different reasons.
So you can love what type of wrestling you like.
I wasn't sure whether to touch on this entirely, and I don't want to put you in the spot too much, right? But there's been some major developments in terms of, WWE is sort of, whether we like it or not, they are the standard bearer for this industry, right? And there's been a guy that's ran that for like our whole life.
Yeah.
He is now, apparently, I believe it when I see it type thing, he is, out of the picture.
Yeah.
Or, retired.
Yeah. For how long?
Because he woke up one day and was like, I think I'll just retire today. That's what happened there, right?
No.
But, Triple H is now in charge of the creative side of things, which, I think Stephanie's the CEO, but the creative side of things is the thing that really, that's your bread and butter, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he obviously had a big impact on NXT and actually he had a big impact on what caused the women's wrestling boom because he gave people like Paige and people talk about the Four Horsemen a lot, but when you actually look before that, it was really and truly the likes of Paige and Emma.
It was
they kind of began that as a fan watching it, and he was the one that allowed them to go out there and tear the house down and gave them those like they obviously are responsible for their amazing work, but in terms of actually getting the chance to go out there and do it, he was running the show at that time, and now he's running the Raws and the SmackDowns, the whole thing. So, as a wrestler, like, do you look at that and go, this could be a big game changer here?
Yeah, I think it could be. Everyone loves Vince. Everyone thinks like wrestling, everything he's done for wrestling, but Triple H has done so much for like NXT, NXT UK, all the British talent he's helped with. Like he's done so much for wrestling, and to think that wrestling was just like one, WWE was just like one brand, and now it's like they have a UK brand, they have NXT, they have like all these different things that you can work for. There's so many opportunities. So I think there's like it's like limitless to what he can do when he steps in. Even like SummerSlam last night was the first pay-per-view with him, and it was amazing. So it's just like, well, can only get better, surely. So it's exciting. I think it's exciting.
Definitely. I mean, it wasn't even just seeing that whole time in NXT stuff. I didn't think it was just like, oh, these are great women's matches. I thought these are the best matches on the card.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was probably the first time that I'd ever really thought that, because they were given the chance to show that, and it's, as a fan, you're like, what is he going to do with these women wrestlers now? But it could be.
You don't know what's
so many amazing things. Like, even somebody like Viper, you got to imagine is going to hit everybody from, ICW and like that that's went to NXT UK, your Wolfies of the world and things like that. They've got to be in with more of a shout now, surely.
Oh yeah.
And so it's exciting. We could really be on the cusp of like a big UK sort of boom, if you like, for the next few years.
Definitely.
And I'm sure you'll have a big part to play in that.
Oh, well, I hope so.
I would love to talk more to you about SummerSlam, but I've not seen it yet. So.
Have you not?
No.
It was good. It was good. I'll say that.
Worth watching?
Yeah, worth watching. Definitely.
Because some of them in recent times have not been worth watching.
It was, main event was good.
Interesting.
So,
I'm excited about this.
It was good.
But no, look, this has been a lot of fun. How long have we went for, Paul? I never. That's pretty good. No, you see, normally, like, because I'm so shy, my timing, I'll talk to somebody and I'll be like, this feels like it could be 5 minutes or 2 hours long. I'm not sure.
You don't know
how long we've been speaking for. So it's always worth asking. I think I ask them that every time. But listen, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
And I hope you've enjoyed coming on. Is there anything you would like to kind of finish on, promote, or such and such? Any shows coming up? I know you were saying you get things you can't really talk about right now.
Yeah, all my socials, if you want to catch up, is at Ashley Vega UK. But yeah.
And see if also just while we're at it, try and get that Jason Getty gets out top on, man. Come on, he's too he's too nice looking to be one of them. Come on, the fuck, what's happening with that?
What, with Jason?
He's too. Yeah, actually, seeing I met him, I swear to God, I says to Paul, I was like, that guy is too nice a guy to be one of them, man. What's happening with that?
It's not fair. It's not fair. Like, he needs to get converted over to the Celtic side, but that's not going to happen.
Exactly. No,
sadly.
I'll work on it, man. We'll see if we can do that.
I've tried, but it's hard. It is hard. Like, bringing a Rangers man home to your mum and dad who are Celtic fans is always hard. Yeah,
but to be fair, normally I'll meet a Rangers fan, but man, I don't know about that. But I met Jason, man, I was like, I can't deny this guy.
He's
seems
alright.
like a good guy.
Yeah.
But outside the ring, of course, in the ring, he seems a bit dastardly.
Oh yeah.
There you go. But no, listen, I really enjoyed this, and I wish you all the best. I think your story's great, and you're only going to get better. I'm really excited to see what happens next. But if you ever had that match with Mickey James, feel free to come back on and talk about it, man. I'd love to have you back on.
I'll probably be dead after that, so I would have simply passed away if I got to wrestle Mickey James. So I don't know if I'd be here, but if I can, I will.
Well, you're always welcome to come back on. I really appreciate your time, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me.